this problem. Find any pattern in there. If you're going top down, you're finding your scale factor. If you're going left to right, you're finding your constant of proportionality. That's all I was saying to apparently just myself because I was muted. Great. Again, if I'm asking to find the constant of proportionality, just think back to what we did on Monday with the robot task. We did clicks per second. We called it a unit rate. So now we're just taking that definition and we're putting a new word behind it, but it's exactly the same thing. Nathan, I can now see that you were able to make it in, which is perfect. If anybody else was still having some trouble accessing it, I think the links are working now. So you should be good. Perfect. I love the work that some of you are doing. I can see some of you are still finding that scale factor, which is great. I am going to push us that by the end of today, though, we're going to see a couple different tables like this. By the end of today, I want us to kind of stray away from that scale factor method and start looking for that pattern from the left to the right. So if you found your scale factor and you're filling your table in that way, try to now look at what is happening from the cups of rice to the number of people. So how do I go from 2 to 3, or from 2 to 6, 3 to 9? How do I do things like that? Our topic in Unit 2 is talking about a constant of proportionality, which is just an equivalent ratio. Okay, as you're finishing up there, I will start sharing out some of our answers. Be careful with our multiplication, though. I see some answers that I really like with the scale factors, but we're just not multiplying the right way. So be careful with that. Okay, so I will share this one out. It's minor typo, but I will explain as we go. So again, we can find our scale factor there. So we can see on the left side that we noticed that 2 times 5 gave me 10. So then over here, if I do the same thing, I want to make sure I'm doing 6 times 5 to get my answer over here. Okay, we have to make sure we're using that same scale factor. But again, in Unit 2, we're trying to stay away from the scale factor stuff. So as we move through more of these tables, I want us to start thinking about more of an approach that looks like this. So we're finding our constant of proportionality. So this student noticed that if I take everything on the left and multiply it by 3, I'm going to end up getting the right side of the table. So that 3 that this student is finding is my constant of proportionality. It means that there's 3 people per cup of rice. It's the same definition as your unit rate. Your unit rate tells you how the right side of your table moves if your left side has a value of 1. So when we're finding this number, you can take any row in this table, 6 divided by 2, 9 divided by 3. That answer that you're going to get is your constant of proportionality. It's 3 people for 1 cup of rice. So it's always associated with the right side of your table and how 1 unit move in the left side. Okay, here's your next. Same type of a table. So now it says that our recipe says that 6 spring rolls will serve 3 people, and we want to complete the table. Again, we may know how to do the scale factor. You may notice how to scale 6 to 30 and use the same thing to scale your 3 up, but I'm going to push you guys now to try to find that number that's connecting the left side to the right side. And we do have to be very careful here. Be very particular with the language that we use. When we go over this problem, I am going to share it over in the Google Meet so that I can point with my mouse. Again, be careful with our mental math. I saw the same mistake in second period. If you're looking at that first row of 6 to 3, make sure you're doing that division correctly. Perfect. I see a lot of us finding that number from the left to the right. However, I do see us all using language of dividing. So if you're submitting your answer, I'm going to push you to not think in terms of division. So if we're dividing by a number, what does that mean we would be multiplying by? Because we are going to be very specific here. Constant of proportionality means I have to find the number that my left side of the table gets multiplied to get to the right side of my table. And I will go over that once I share out my screen. So if you have your answer submitted and you're using language of dividing by a certain number, also try to think about what that might mean you're multiplying by. So finish up any last minute thoughts. And then when I talk about this problem, I am going to share it on the Nearpod, but I'm also going to share my screen in the Google Meet because I want to be able to point around with my pointer because this is an easy problem, but we have to be careful just with the language that we use. Okay. So you should recognize, and I see looking at all of your work, that we get 15 people for 30 spring rolls, 20 people for 40, and 28 people have 56 items. So a lot of you notice that that pattern in the table is taking the left side and dividing it by 2. Which is fine. However, when we start talking about constants of proportionality, it always has to mean in terms of multiplication. So although I am dividing 6 by 2 to get 3 and 30 by 2 to get 15 and 40 by 2 to get 20, I have to think about what that means I'm multiplying by. So to find that value, that unit rate, we're always taking our right side divided by our left side. So I want to find people per spring roll, which is what I wrote up here, people per roll. So that means I'm taking the people divided by the number of rolls. So I did 3 divided by 6, which is the same thing as 1/2. And then if you want to make that into a decimal, you can. So whenever we're writing our patterns in these tables, we don't want to really write divide by 2. You want to make sure you're saying that that's the same as multiplying it by 1/2. And if you're not comfortable recognizing that dividing by 2 and multiplying by 1/2 is the same thing, you can always find that number that you're multiplying by taking something on the right and dividing it by something on the left. So if you would have done 3 divided by 6, you would have found that constant of proportionality as being 0.5. And again, that tells me that I can take all of my spring rolls, multiply them by 1/2, and it's going to give me the number of people. And then if I have the number of people, I'm just doing the opposite. So instead of multiplying to get to the right side, I can divide to get to the left side. But that's my constant of proportionality. It's your unit rate, and you always get it by taking a right side divided by your left side. And you just want to be very particular with your language. We don't want to say in Unit 2 that we're dividing to get there. We want to try to practice making sure we're using those fractions or those decimals. So if you said divide by 2, you were right, but just be careful that we're trying to think a little bit deeper as we start moving on. Here we have another table. And again, I don't need you to worry about questions 1, 2, or 3 as we fill out the table. It's just going to answer those questions for us. But it says that a bakery uses 8 tablespoons of honey for every 10 cups of flour. We need to figure out that if we have 20 tablespoons, how many cups that's going to be, 13 tablespoons, how many cups that's going to be, and if I have 20 cups, how many tablespoons that will be. So go ahead, find your constant of proportionality, and then use that to move your way through the table. Again, keep in mind when we're talking about all of this scaling stuff, scale factors in Unit 1, proportional relationships in Unit 2, we can never think in terms of adding or subtracting. Think back to what we did whenever we had those shapes in Unit 1 and we tried to add the same thing to each length. We saw that example where we added and it created an incomplete shape. So you can never find patterns in terms of adding or subtracting. You want to make sure you're thinking about what is your left side being multiplied by to get to your right side. This new language of proportional relationship is the same thing as saying, are they scaled copies? Proportional relationship means everything in the left moves by the same amount to get to things on the right. So to figure out what that number is, you take the right divided by the left. If you're typing answers, which is fine, or if you're writing, you can use COP to abbreviate. I can see some of you trying to write that long term, and I know it's not easy to do on the computer. So you can just say COP. Perfect. I see a lot of us getting those good answers, and we're moving away from scale factors, which if you're doing a scale factor, it's not that you're incorrect. I just want to make sure that whenever I say find the constant of proportionality, you're going to know what that means. So finish up whatever part you were writing. I see really good answers. I'm going to share out an answer. Again, specifically in Unit 2, we're moving away from that scale factor idea. So anytime we're seeing a table like this and you're trying to figure out the link between the left and the right, you have to find that constant of proportionality. That means take a number on the right divided by a number on the left. So 10 divided by 8 gave a constant of proportionality of 1.25. That means there's 1 1/4 cups of flour per tablespoon of honey. Constant of proportionality always tells you how the right side of your table moves if your left side moves by 1. So once you find that 125, use that to multiply through by the rest. 20 times 125, 13 times 125. And then if I have something on the right, you're moving in reverse. So it's like when we were doing scale factors and we had the bigger shape and we were going smaller, you're going to divide 20 divided by 1.25. Again, that 125 is your unit rate. It's your constant of proportionality. It's the number linking the left side to the right side so you can see what your equivalent ratios are. Here's the last table that you're going to work on. And then I'm going to share out a summary video, or not video, slide that I'm just going to walk through just to reiterate what you need to take away from today and to just make sure we're going to be careful with our fractions. But in this problem, you can see that we have 4 quarters equal to 10 dimes. So find your constant of proportionality and then use that to figure out if you have 6 quarters, how many dimes would that equal? Or if you have 14 quarters, how many dimes would that equal? Okay, I can see, I'm not sure what the last word is, what you're having trouble with. I can see that you're trying to write me something. I just can't read. I might now understand what you're saying. Oh, I don't know why. Just hang tight. Kenny, and then some of you might be having trouble seeing the screens. Kenny's saying that his is just coming out as a blank screen. I'm going to share it out. I'll put my answer in the Google Meet too. I'll just share my screen so that you'll just be able to see and follow along as I go over it. I don't know why there's so many things going wrong today, but it's fine. It's always fine. We're doing our best. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my answer. I'm going to put it in the Google Meet also just by presenting my screen, just in case you're somebody that for some reason can't see what's going on. So again, we're just finding the constant of proportionality. So what can I multiply my quarters by to get my number of dimes? To figure that out, take right divided by left. So 10 over 4 reduces to 2.5. So my unit rate or my constant of proportionality tells me that 2.5 dimes is the same as 1 quarter, right? It's 25 cents versus 10 cents. So we can think about that in our head. But then once I find that constant of proportionality or that value, I'm using that to multiply through. So 6 times 2.5 and then 14 times 2.5. Okay, so we are done in the Nearpod right now. So if all of you could just go back to the Google Meet, I'm just going to go through a problem just to summarize and to show you how to handle a fraction if you see something through like that. Although here's another tech issue, my Apple Pen just died, so my writing is probably going to be pretty terrible. So that's great. Anyway, so if you're seeing a table like this, you need to make sure if you're asked to find the constant of proportionality. If you're asked to find your constant of proportionality, you want to make sure that you're taking the right side divided by the left side. So if you see something like this, it's similar to that one where we were dividing. I know a lot of you would say, well, 4 divided by 4 gets me 1. If I divide 8 by 4, I get 2. 12 by 4 to get 3. So you're going to notice that that pattern says divide by 4. But you want to be particular with your language. I don't want us anymore talking about constants of proportionality or scale factors in terms of division. So if you see something like that happening, it means that your COP or your constant of proportionality is going to be a fraction. So if that's causing you some hesitation, you can always follow the steps of taking the right side of your table divided by the left side of your table. So if I need to figure out how many cups of milk there are in 1 tablespoon of chocolate syrup, I can take 1 and divide it by 4. So if you do 1 divided by 4, you're going to end up just getting a fraction. It's not letting me write anything, so I'm like giving up at this point, but it's fine. If I do 1 divided by 4, your constant proportionality would just be 1/4. Or if you make that a decimal, you're going to get 0.25. So you just want to specify here that your pattern is that you're taking your tablespoons of chocolate syrup, multiplying them by 1/4, and it's giving you your cups of milk. So again, straying away from that idea that you're dividing by 4, you want to use the language of 1/4 or 0.25. So that means that I can take all of these tablespoons of chocolate syrup, multiply them by 1/4, and it's going to get me my cups of milk. So in terms of the language or your unit, your constant of proportionality, again, always tells you how your right side moves if you have 1 unit over on the left. So cups of milk per tablespoon of chocolate. It's always the right compared to the left. And if you're stuck on knowing how to find that number, pick a number on the right side, divided by a number on the left side. Again, really making sure that you're straying away from that idea of dividing, and we're starting to understand what that means in terms of a fraction. Okay, so you do have an Edpuzzle video posted and some practice problems. I'm sorry there are so many glitches in this, and I thank you all for being patient and letting me know so many things were going wrong. But so at this point, you are free to start working on that Edpuzzle, and you are free to start working on those practice problems. It's all problems similar to this. I believe you can skip question 4 or maybe question 3. Make sure you're reading the directions that are posted in Google Classroom for those practice problems, because there are a handful of ones that you're able to skip. So you can work on that for the next 10 minutes. You can stay in here. If you want to wait till 10th period, you're free to leave and then come back, and I will be here to help whatever you need. But this is now free for you to move on to your independent time, where hopefully your stuff is working a little bit better than mine, because this was pretty frustrating. Okay, so skipping questions, I'm referring to the practice problems. So you cannot skip Edpuzzle questions. That feature I have turned off. I'm saying there are a handful of questions in the practice problems that either are back from Unit 1 or they're from some of the lessons that I skipped, and I just don't want to put you guys through the stress of trying to figure that out, because it's not really pertaining to what we did here. So I can't remember which one it is, but I want to say like maybe question 3 or 4, but I have it written in the Google Classroom. Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that, because I'm sure others were a little bit confused. But yeah, I turned off the feature, so you are not allowed to skip the Edpuzzle questions. Now I need to make sure I'm charging my pen. And now it's writing. I'll tell you what. Guys. This tech is not my friend today.